just hustle play. I thought I'm going to get dunked on, to be honest with you. But, going down the stretch, just do whatever, it takes to win the game. Just put yourself in a position that can win the game. And, I saw the play coming. I saw that Chris Paul was throwing the lob. So I'm just going to jump vertical, towards the rim. Hopefully I can, be there in time. And I was there in time and was able to get a good block and go down, get to a point. So it was a great hustle play.
He thought he was going to get dunked on, Tim Legler. Aiden didn't quite grab it clean. That's something Stanford Steve pointed out, which was maybe had something to do with it. Take us through it. I asked and you responded.
As good a defensive play as you're going to see, and I think there's one guy on the planet that's making that play, and he made it because of what it took to do it. First of all, this is a pet set that they love to run for Booker coming off the dribble handoff. Giannis's shoulders are square to the opposite sideline, and he spins out not knowing where DeAndre Ayton is, takes one little baby step, and gets to the top of the square with one baby step. He didn't even have a chance to gather. And most guys, Scott, in that situation, if they're actually even going to attempt to make a play like that, they're never going to turn their chest away from the guy they're guarding. In other words, they're going to jump out on the ball, but they're going to kind of shade toward the guy that they were playing, and then maybe you have a chance to react to that. The fact that he's blind to where DeAndre Ayton is, and he's up high enough to make sure Devin Booker doesn't get off a mid-range jump shot, because that's his deadly shot, to spin out not knowing where that guy is and go meet him above the square at exactly the time he catches the basketball. One guy on the planet is making that play, and he just did it.
Yeah, he high points the ball. Maybe the fact that, he's involved in so many alley-oop plays himself, you kind of know what the trajectory is or whatever else. But I'm with you. I feel like the one guy that could have did. Now, I want to ask you on the other side about Chris Paul, because this is a guy, Tim, who so often his assist to turnover ratio is double digits to none or maybe one. You never see him turn it over 5 times, and you certainly don't see him turn it over in big-time spots repeatedly. I just wonder, what did you notice about what went wrong for Paul in Game 4?
Well, for me, he looked gassed. I thought he looked really tired pretty much the entire game. He only had the one little spurt. When Booker went out of the game with his 5th foul at the beginning of the 4th quarter, Chris Paul hit a couple of buckets, and it looked like, okay, here he goes. He's going to try to be a late-game savior while Booker's out of the game. But that only lasted a couple of possessions. I thought overall he just didn't have any juice tonight. And I'm sitting here now, Scott, after 4 games, and I'm saying, can't believe I'm about to say this, Chris Paul's become an X factor for me. And what I mean by that is I know he's a star, but right now his scoring production has gone down in every single game. And tonight, Devin Booker, to me, reminded me of 2006 Dwayne Wade. That was a clinic of one-on-one basketball in the mid-range area of the floor. What he did tonight was so spectacular, and they still come up short because Chris Paul didn't give them any additional supplemental offense. So now I'm really wondering, what are we going to see out of Chris Paul in these last 3 games? And as a result, for me, he is the single biggest X factor in this series. Because if he is hunting shots and he's getting to that mid-range jumper and he's beating you with the pick and roll and the snake dribble and all the things he loves to do in that area, the Suns are going to win this series. But if he has quiet offensive nights like he did tonight going forward, the Bucks are going to win this series. And that's why this guy now has an awful lot of focus on him, and he's going to hear a lot of noise before Saturday.
Playoffs are about answering questions, right? We wondered about Middleton earlier in this series, had an off game for the Bucks. What's he going to give you? Well, how about 40 in Game 4? So we'll see what kind of answer Chris Paul's got as this series goes back to 40 for Middleton. And you see the final 5.5 of the 4th quarter. Suns held a 5-point lead, having to try to manage the foul situation that involved Booker. The Bucks able to outscore the Suns 19-8 down the stretch. Suns a couple of costly turnovers, only able to make 3 of their 10 shots down the stretch. Brand new series, best of 3 from here. And we welcome in Tim Legler. We get a look at him as we get a look at the Deer District in Milwaukee. Man, they're fireworks and enjoying There's a lot going on in this game, Legs. As always, I give you a wide berth to just tell me where you want to go first about what ultimately determined this game.
Yeah, there were half a dozen times, Scott, when I thought that the game was going to be won in a different direction. There were so many big plays made in the last 5 minutes of the game. I think for me what stood out was the fact that Chris Middleton was in rhythm enough earlier in the game. He felt comfortable being the guy that was going to decide matters. Obviously, you're trying to overcome what Devin Booker did. The foul trouble really took a lot away from the beginning of that quarter for Devin Booker, and maybe the Suns win this thing by 8-10 points if he doesn't have to leave the game. But as a result of that, the Bucks stayed within striking distance, and then Chris Middleton got to his sweet spot. And when he gets to the middle area of the floor and he's off the dribble and he already is in rhythm from earlier in the game, he's as good a late game closer as anybody in this league, really, in that situation. The question is, are they going to go there in those moments, Scott? When I've watched them over the years, last few years, when they have struggled at times in the clutch, it's because they've gotten away from that. This is their best option with the game on the line. It's put the ball in the hands of Chris Middleton, whether you give him an isolation in the middle area or, better yet, let's run some ball screen with Giannis. Giannis slipping, diving, occupying guys, let Chris Middleton come off. And if he gets to that 15 to 18-foot area on balance, he goes up. He's got such great height to get that shot off with a little bit of a lean back. He took over the game when they absolutely had to have it. But there were a lot of big plays made. Pat Connaughton made some big plays in this one. Giannis, obviously, with one of the best defensive recoveries you're going to see in a game, period, much less with what was on the line to break up that lob to DeAndre Ayton. So a lot of guys contributed. But for me, if Chris Middleton doesn't take over offensively, put the ball in the basket when they absolutely have to have it on back-to-back possessions, the Suns are up 3-1 right now.
Tim, that encompasses a lot of the conversations I feel like you and I have had over these past few years. One, it's about the Bucks' late game and late clock situations, who you're going to go to. In this case, it's Middleton. And it also speaks to who Middleton is. I don't feel like people talk about him like he's a bum, but I also don't feel like people talk about him like he's what he is. A guy who can get you 40 in the finals and help win you a game. That's who he can be, and I don't always think that he's described as such. Why do you think that is?
He definitely isn't. And honestly, look, even if you weren't on board with Chris Middleton being described the way you just did prior to the last couple of postseasons, I mean, if you're not putting him there now, you're just not paying attention. You're not watching to how consistent this guy has been. Yeah, he's had a couple of off nights here or there, and it seems like when he does it, he catches so much weight for not supporting Giannis Antetokounmpo. But I've seen a lot of nights where he's been so good late, irrespective of what Giannis Antetokounmpo is doing. And in some cases, he's the guy that actually is the one you want the ball in his hands more than the two-time MVP. He has come through enough times for me, Scott, now that I expected. I said it before the game. I thought Chris Middleton was a given. I wasn't worried about Chris Middleton tonight. Kind of knew Giannis would put up numbers. I knew Booker would bounce back. I think for me, the two X factors right now are Jrue Holiday and Chris Paul. You're not exactly sure what you are going to get offensively from those two players. Tonight, Chris Paul didn't really give Devin Booker any help except for a very short spurt when he went out of the game with that fifth foul. But for the most part, it was Devin Booker's show tonight, and it just wasn't enough to offset what you got out of Giannis. And then Chris Middleton was sensational late in the game. But if you don't know this guy's capable of doing this, you're not paying attention to Chris Middleton over the last 2 or 3 postseasons.
Chris Middleton's with me. I'm going to get to him now. I've never done this to you, Tim. I'm going to make a request. I don't know if it's even possible to do this, but if there's some way you can touchscreen the Giannis block on Ayton, I need to figure out how in the hell it's possible to block that alley-oop, because it was about to be a tie game and then it wasn't. So I'm going to get to Chris. If we're not going to diagram it, at least let's talk about it a little bit later, all right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I can't wait to see that one.
All right, that's Tim Legler, and we welcome in Chris Middleton now. Chris, congratulations on a 40-point performance. I don't know if you were able to hear as Tim Legler and I are bragging on what you just did. A tremendous performance, and your team needed every bit of what you gave. How do you best describe sort of your level of confidence in this moment to give your team what you gave them? It would be apparent that Chris Middleton can't hear me. Hi, Chris. It's Scott Van Pelt. Can you hear me? Nope. 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 All right. We're going to get the Chris Middleton microphone sorted out, I hope. And if a little more context on his night while we work on the microphone issues. For the first 3 games of the series, Middleton was averaging just over 19 points per game. More than double that tonight with the 40-piece, a postseason career high for him as he outscored the Suns by himself 10 finals. And there's so many storylines here, guys. I want to kind of take them in order because Booker was remarkable. And then I thought for sure he fouled Drew Holiday, but it wasn't his 6th. That could have come back to been massive, if he's able to be the difference after what would have been his 6th foul. I just wonder, what did you think of the whistle there throughout the game, particularly as it related to the Booker call, Jeff?
Well, I thought it was a clear foul, and I just think the playoffs are called so much differently than the regular season in the NBA. It's allowed much more physical contact. You can ride and drive through screens. Contact in the paint is more like it was back in the 90s in this series, and I actually enjoy the physicality, but it is a change-up for the players.
And it shouldn't be. You should be consistent. The same way you referee and play during the regular season should be the same way you referee and play during the postseason. So to me, it's a difficult adjustment to make, and it was clearly, I'm in agreement with both of you guys, Devin Booker's 6th foul it should have been.
And maybe, look, Suns fans could look at the 5th and say whatever. I mean, we could take a magnifying glass to every foul. The 6th in particular, it seemed like the 6th, they didn't call it. We just talked to Chris Middleton, and I talked to Tim Legler a little bit earlier about sort of what he is, Mark. I mean, this is a guy capable of scoring 40 points, and I don't necessarily feel like he's seen and accepted necessarily as a star. I mean, if you can get 40 in the finals and close out a game like that, that's what you are you not, Mark?
You look at his efficiency, not just this year, in his entire career. The guy has the complete package on the offensive end. Jump shot, mid-range shot, three-point shot, foul shot, the ability to ISO and make plays, the post up, the size. Defensively, he is an outstanding basketball player, and it should not be breaking news when you're talking about the NBA Finals. He's playing against an elite guy in Booker and playing him shot for shot.
It's a 2-point game. Booker has an alley-oop to Ayton that looks for the world like it's going to tie the game up, Jeff. I mean, you have the best seat in the house to see what Giannis does on a nightly basis. Help frame that for me, that play that's kept it a 2-point lead for the Bucks.
It's one of the great recovery plays that you'll ever witness. He was guarding a guy who was having a career playoff night type of situation, so he had to be up a little bit higher on Booker when he was guarding Ayton in the pick and roll to try to stunt his dribble penetration. And then Booker, off the dribble, just flipped it up. And for him to have the agility, mobility, and hostility to go up there and block at the rim, that's a special, special play.
You are a rapper.
I was a little channeling
in
a little
my own mind, yeah.
A little Walt Clyde for the people. Guys, on the way out, if either of you have any sense of the direction this thing goes, I'd love to know. I mean, it's been home court thus far. You feel like there's any clarity about who ultimately wins this title?
I'll tell you what, we're going to Phoenix, and it's been an outstanding NBA Finals. You're talking about two teams that's evenly matched, that are well coached, and they've left it on the floor. Milwaukee looked dead. They come home and they take care of business. It's been a heck of a run.
Yeah, I thought Milwaukee really struggled to find any half-court rhythm, and then they got a 33-point fourth quarter. I thought it was a terrific comeback. I thought they were tired for a lot of the game, and somehow, some way, found their way to victory through some great defense and a terrific offensive performance by Middleton.
Well said. And then, it's moments, right? And in games like this, it's moments. Connaughton hits a 3, Middleton takes over. You get a block on one end, and now we got a true best of 7, it would appear, tied up at 2 apiece. Mark, Jack, Jeff, I beg your pardon. Thanks so much for the time, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Yep, thanks so much. All right, so series turns into the best of 3, as we've said. Bucks have been dominant in a sense this postseason, 11-2 in these games, the 3rd best record by any team since 2000. What am I trying to say here? Oh, games 3 through 7. Once they get to game 3, it helps if I sort of take a second to process what it is I'm trying to say. Was Chris Middleton. 10 of his career playoff high 40 came in the final 2:15 as he outscored the Suns by 6. That was the final margin in this game. We welcome in Doris Burke, who called the game on ESPN Radio. And look, we talk about Middleton's performance. That was obvious, right? Sometimes, though, it's not how many, but when. And I asked Chris when he was on with us about the Connaughton three that gave them the lead. You're in the building. Help me understand, how does that change the direction and the feeling?
The 3 threes he hit were massive. And consider, here's a guy who's never going to handle the basketball. They're never going to call a play for him. But Pat Connaughton, please be shot ready when they double-team Giannis Antetokounmpo. And to have the chops in this game with perhaps your season and your finals championship on the line, Pat Connaughton steps in confidently and knocks down massive threes. Incredible.
Chris Paul, and I ask you as the handles and the point guard that we know that you still got on demand when called upon. What happened to Chris Paul tonight? He looked out of sorts.
They are not walking away with an NBA championship with Chris Paul at the level he's played at over the last 2 games. Consider in prior 2 rounds, this guy had 14 total turnovers. He's already above that number through 4 games. And it's mistakes of finding his way to bad spots on the floor, leaving his feet with no decision in mind. It's impossible for me to sort of wrap my mind around where Chris Paul is turning the basketball over, Scott. I'm so unaccustomed to seeing the point guard make these kinds of mistakes. Something tells me in Game 5 he will respond.
I have a feeling I'm going to ask every guest we have for their perspective of the Giannis block, just because he does the outrageous so often that we become accustomed. But that was just, you tell me, you're in the building. What did he do?
I think both JB and I leaned back and we were absolutely stunned that he made a play seemingly out of nowhere. And listen, it's so funny because we spoke to Pat Connaughton yesterday and he was saying everybody's talking about the 40 points. Don't forget what he does in help defense situations, and that's just a massive block at the absolute most critical time. Just a special play by a 2-time MVP.
How he didn't foul him. Well, Jeff talked about the ability to redirect and the ability to get there and make the block with his length, but how he didn't foul, I have no idea, but I don't think he did. Doris, as always, your time's appreciated, and we look forward to talking again. We've got some thoughts from Coach Bud on that block. Thank you, Doris. Here's Coach Bud Budenholzer.
Their connection in the pick and roll game, their ability to make plays is very good. And Giannis just made a spectacular block, a spectacular play. His ability to cover ground and get to that point, get to the top. That's an NBA Finals special moment right there. And we're going to need more of them. His impact on the game on both ends of the court. It's a big-time block. That's what he's capable of.
When you have that kind of a lead in the fourth, if we can just hold on to the ball and get good possessions, you feel like you can at least hold it there. And so, I got to look at the film and see, was it schematics or was it just, their defense? I'm not quite sure yet, but we certainly had a lot of self-inflicted stuff tonight.
Michael Wilbon joins us now. Michael, you've seen so many of these, and the dust is still settling, so our vision, our focus maybe isn't crystal clear. Monty's going to go back and look at the tape. But as I ask you right now about a 33-21 fourth quarter where a Suns 6-point lead turns into a 6-point loss, and I ask you, Michael, what happened? What would your answer be?
The same thing that happened all game, Scott. We have talked about the Suns almost never beating themselves, right? The whole season. They just don't beat themselves. That's one of the themes coming in to the finals because it was true in every series. They beat themselves tonight. And the fourth quarter is no different from the rest of the game. You look at those two 17-5 margins, 17-5 offensive rebounding, Milwaukee over Phoenix. Okay, you can understand that. The Suns are small, and without Saric, they're smaller. And that's going to happen. They're going to get beat on the boards, particularly by a team with the strength and size of Milwaukee. But 17 turnovers to 5 turnovers, the Bucks protected the ball, and the Suns just gave it away. These turnovers, and you heard Monty refer to it, they weren't forced. This is like tennis with unforced errors. Right. force, stepping on the baseline a couple of times, stepping on the sideline a couple of times. Chris Paul had 5 turnovers to only 7 assists. And they just seemed weak with the ball. They seemed tired. Again, Monty addressed that and said, we don't have time for tired. But they played that way. And so as great as Middleton was, and he was great, and as great as Giannis's block was, I just got a text. I probably shouldn't mention this because I don't know if it's on the record or off the record, but it's complimentary. It should be on the record. It's from a coach whose jersey hangs in the rafters here, so you can sort of figure that out.
Yeah.
Who just said, this is one of the greatest blocks I've ever seen. It's one of the greatest blocks anybody's ever seen. You start screaming. I was sitting here with Richard Jefferson and Perk, and you're breathless because you can't believe what he's gone up and done to Ayton. Not some 6'7" dude. Man, he did this against DeAndre Ayton, who's having a great playoffs himself, though not scoring tonight. But those turnovers and that offensive rebounding, to me, if you're Milwaukee, you got to feel you have an advantage. You found something. The rebounding can stay because it's size involved. But those turnovers, I mean, the Suns have got a real problem if they can't protect the ball any better than that. They should be going home, Scott, to play for an NBA championship. And they somewhere between let it slip and handed it over. And I guess we're going to talk about that for the next 2 days as we figure out, before Game 5, can the Suns, rally themselves? It's got to be a really disappointing loss. And I think Monty knows that, which is why he made the comments he made to his team immediately in that locker room.
And I want to follow with that, Michael, because you've seen so many of these, and I smile as I ask this question because through the years that I've been doing this show, you and I have talked about these moments where there is this tendency to want to take what has happened most recently and apply it to what's about to happen next. And that's often a fool's errand because things change from day to day and game to game. That said, do you feel like, having watched these 4 games that have all been won by the home team, you have any sense of clarity about what will happen next?
No. If you tell me that Milwaukee's going to get that kind of, that's from the Bill Russell archives, that block, right, of Ayton's dunk. If you tell me there's going to be that kind of game-changing play in the final, whatever it was, minute and change, okay, I can tell you that Milwaukee has momentum, but we don't know we're going to see that. If you can tell me, I don't know what happened, but Chris Paul wasn't himself tonight. He didn't have it. Now, anybody gets a game, even a future Hall of Famer who's played like he has played this whole postseason, I don't care who you are, you can get one where you just don't have it that night. I thought Chris was so determined to set up his teammates in the first half that he never got into a rhythm. And by the time he needed to, was probably late in the game. And he had done that. He knew he had to help Book get going to where he was going to have one of those great Devin Booker nights, and he did. But if you can tell me that you're going to have a similar script, sure, you can read it and say, oh, yeah, here's what's going to happen. I don't believe that. I don't believe Chris Paul has come this far to simply not have it in Game 5 at home in Phoenix. I don't know that Booker can have 42 again, but he may not need to. Other Suns players, because they didn't really help Booker out the entire game, didn't help him out early tonight. Jay Crowder hit 3 threes, but I think he was 3 for 9. So the Suns are going to have to really go back and examine. Just one quick thing, Scott, that, watching, you mentioned watching all these games I've watched and covered all these games. Winning a championship requires suffering. Unless you're Irvin Johnson, everybody else, maybe not Tim Duncan. Okay, so there's 2 guys in the history of the game who haven't suffered en route to winning a championship. That means LeBron, who had that series where he got just stuffed by San Antonio. It means Michael Jordan, who lost to the Pistons 3 times en route to finally, slaying the dragon that tormented him. And one thing I thought about, I picked the Suns to win this game. And I said to Perk, during late in the game, I just said, the Suns are going to give this away. And it requires suffering. Winning a championship in this sport more than any other. It's not like pro football where people go from last to first. It just isn't. In this sport, the greatest players in the game, how many times Jerry West lose in the finals? To one team, no less. It requires suffering. The Suns are feeling that tonight. I don't care what brave face they put on the next, 72 hours between now and Game 5. They suffered tonight because they know they should be playing at home for a championship. But that's the way this sport is, and I think that's the glory of it, the greatness of it, the drama of it. Richard Jefferson is standing right here next to me. He knows. He's been through that and then got to the other side of it. And that's suffering, man. I mean, if you're the Suns and you had that lead, and you got closers, you got Devin Booker and CP3, probably in the reverse order. What are you going to do? How are you going to rally that yourselves between now and then?
Suffering is the truth, and so is this. Anything worth having is on the other side of something difficult. Winning championships is hard, and it will be hard for either of these teams to win 2 of the remaining 3 games and become NBA champions in 21. Michael, thank you for your time. We appreciate you.